I heard you refer to the Church of England as a prostitute, a whore.
It is a whore, yeah. The Church of England is a whore.
Like a King's Cross whore, like £25 a blowjob type whore.
Taking Christ out of Christmas, calling it gift-giving season. What the fuck? We're in the fight of our lives right now. The English are not being replaced. They are committing suicide. If you go to any Muslim country in the world, Christians are being persecuted. Drop all this liberal nonsense about multiculturalism as a failed experiment. You can't negotiate with Hamas because Hamas is religiously committed to the idea of the domination of Sharia law across the world. The world needs to act, and it needs to act fast. I genuinely believe that redemption is for everybody.
Well, even people that bury their daughters under the patio.
I mean it. It's for the Mohammed Hijabs of this world. It's for the Ali Dawahs of this world. It's for the Fred Wests of this world.
I'd want him in a gas chamber.
I'm not against the death penalty. There's no justification for abortion.
What about if someone's raped and they fall pregnant accidentally?
There is no grounds upon which you can justify the murder of a child.
That's fucking heavy. For the last year, I've been working with Ryan from Change, and now they're sponsoring our channel so we can keep bringing you these conversations. Change are the #1 mentoring program that teaches you e-commerce step by step where no previous experience is necessary. Whilst working with Change, I've seen life-changing money be made and community members free up more time to spend with their families. A successful business is not built overnight, and you would need to put in the work before reaping the rewards. The more you put in, the more you get out. The community are full of like-minded people, all striving for success and all willing to help each other. Change offer one-on-one training, online courses and group seminars so you get all the support you need to succeed. If you're looking for a new opportunity, get in touch with Ryan via Instagram at RyanJB and he'll take you through all the steps to building your own successful business. Bob.
Liam.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Good to see you.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, I love it when you come back.
I always enjoy it. So.
And I hope people are settled in nicely. Well, the premiere is Christmas Day, and this will obviously be playing throughout the gap between Christmas Day and New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and I hope people get a lot of value from this one. Let's start with a Christmas story.
We'll start with a reading from Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. When we first came, I think we looked at Psalm 72 maybe, or Psalm 70, and you use that as our launching point to the Christmas story. So now we're going to look at another prophecy, and this was hundreds of years, like the Psalm was 1,000 years before Christ. This was hundreds of years before Christ. And it says in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, "For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There will be no end to the increase of his government or of peace on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness, from then on and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this." And this is a prophecy about Jesus Christ. In all of history, no other human being apart from Jesus is given these titles. And for 2,000 years, he has been acclaimed with these titles. And this was said of Jesus hundreds of years before he was born. And all of these titles and accolades are given to him. When Christ was born in Bethlehem, it was inaugurating, like we said the last Christmas special, it was inaugurating the chance to make the world new. And Christ's birth in Bethlehem is the beginning of this transformative power, this transformative energy that begins to change the world. And these titles that he's received, it says, I'll just go through it briefly. It says, "For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us." And so this son is Jesus Christ, the son of Mary, but he's also the son of the Eternal Father. And he's given to us as the basis upon which life can be recast, that life can be remade. And then it goes on, and the government will rest on his shoulders. Now, this Christ has been the foundation stone of Western civilization, Eastern civilizations, Armenia, Ethiopia. He's been the touchstone by which entire civilizations have been built. And if you remember from the last time that we met for a Christmas special, I pointed out to you that you had incorporated or embodied Christian values in your own life, like the fact that you wouldn't allow people to be bullied, and I said that that's something that you've inherited from your Christian origins.
We're going to unpack that further down the line.
Right, fair enough. But this idea that the government is going to be on his shoulders means that as Christians, we're committed to this idea of organizing government, society, culture, politics, economic law itself according to Christ as the touchstone, that he's the weight-bearing stone upon which we build, And it goes on. And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. These titles that he has as Wonderful Counselor, if you look at the wisdom of Jesus' teachings that you find in the Sermon on the Mount, just to highlight one thing, at the heart of Christ's teachings, the thing that he identifies as the source of all of our problems, or the ingredient that is fundamental to all of our problems, is that there's just a lack of one important resource, which is love. Mm. And when you think that through, whatever the problem, financial, economic, political, cultural, social, when you dig down into it, the thing that's always missing is there's not enough love between people. And when you realize, and when you say that to people, they recognize instinctively the truth of it. And then they recognize the wisdom of it. And it's a wondrous thought to hold, that the thing that is lacking in our lives is that love of God, is that love that we share between one another.
Let me interject.
Yeah, go on.
Because I was having a conversation with somebody a little while ago, and the word love got brought up. Mm. And I can't remember which of the two of us said, how do you define love?
Yeah.
But how do you define love? What is love? I know it's a strong, overbearing feeling of care, consideration. You can confuse lust with love, but it's certainly it's such a powerful entity that it's consuming, and it can feel like a drug. It's such a force. But how would you define love?
I would define love in the same way that Jesus did. Jesus said, there is no greater love than this, than he who lays down his life for his friends. And the love is this idea that you sacrifice yourself for the betterment or for the well-being of others, that you put other people first and you work for their good. And that's how a Christian defines love. It's not a feeling. It's not an adjective. It's a verb. It's an action. It's what we do. It's when you wake up in a morning and you go and make that coffee for your wife or for your partner. It's when you go out at 6 a.m. in the morning to work a hard shift at a factory because you know that you're earning the money to pay the bills for your little kids. It's the idea of jumping on that grenade to make sure that your platoon doesn't get killed by the bomb. Love is that action where, without self-regard, you offer yourself in action for the betterment and the improvement of others. And that's the thing that's missing. That's the bit that's missing in so much of the problems of our society, is that actually it's so much about me, about what I can get out of this, how I can make my life better, how I can use you to get to that end over there that I'm interested in, rather than actually saying to myself, no, you are the end that I'm interested in, and I will use other things to make your life better.
So love is the action you take that's inspired by the feeling.
Yeah, attachments, sentiments, affections, are often described in the romance model as being love. And we Christians are not against attachments, and we're not against sentiment, and we're not against, affection. But we wouldn't say that these things are love in and of themselves. But when they express themselves in, say, a kiss or a hug, or a hand on the back, a consoling moment of some kind, that's love, And so you can see why those feelings get called love, because they often lead to an action. Like when a man makes love to his wife, he does so because he loves her, and it's the act,
A display of.
Yeah. The thing about affections is that they're temporary. Obviously, as any married couple will be able to tell you, there are days that you wake up, you look at your partner and you go, I don't want to be around you. It's like, oh, why are you in my bed? But they're not things that should decide our action. Love is when you make that pledge, because a pledge is an action. You make that pledge, right? I'm gonna make sure that I fulfill this contract. And I keep to my word. That's an expression of love, and to do it even if it comes to you at a loss because you've committed yourself to it. So love is the energy, as it were, from God that nobilizes us, that separates us from the beast.
See, I associate Christmas with love. I'm assuming you associate Christmas with Christ.
Yes,
first and foremost. So from someone that's non-religious, when I think of Christmas, I think of love. And I think of the joy it brings me because I'm sat around the table of people that I do love, but natural progression of life. There's normally one person, certainly every few years, that used to sit there that isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And then I can associate Christmas with pain. This year particularly, and I'm going to have a moment of honesty now in the hope that it lets people know that they're not alone, because on the internet you see people and they seem like they've got their shit together, and everything's cool behind closed doors. Being the loneliest Christmas I've had in 15 years since my nan passed. No children's laughter in the background. That's all gone due to a separation. No noise in the background, no songs, no games in the kitchen. Very different Christmas to what I'm used to. And a lot of people reach out to me in a similar situation, and I can't respond to everyone and just say, I know how you feel. I feel the same because I'm in the same boat as you. And I haven't got time. So I'm hoping that people will hear this and think, that's a real honest thing for Liam to say.
Yeah.
A separation has caused a lot of loneliness and pain, because to not have your children or your stepchildren that you've loved and adored for nearly 10 years not be there because things just didn't work out, it's painful. And so anyone that's sitting at home alone, chances are maybe around this time, I may even be sat home alone because I won't stay in the place where I'm going to eat with my family, because there'll come a time where I'm going to want to be alone because I don't want to put a dampener on the mood. But it's going to be a day of reflection, memories, maybe some regret, maybe some remorse, maybe some fond memories. I don't really know how I'm going to feel because it's such a roller coaster. It's a bereavement when you lose people. So, I hope that brings something to someone that's listening, just that little bit of honesty from me, and things can only get better. So the good news is next Christmas is going to be fucking great because it'll be better than this one.
And a lot of people do go through that. You lose someone at any point in the year, and then you've got to have that moment where you have that first Christmas without them. And everybody, and it's a rite of passage for any bereavement and for any bereavement process that you have that first year without the person that you love. And for other families, there's a lot of stress involved because, they get wrapped up in, you're bringing people together that haven't really talked to one another or hung out with one another for a year, and then you stick them all in the same house, and there's frictions because they haven't been talking for the 6 months prior to Christmas. And then they suddenly have to try and make small talk all day.
And you think how divided people are at the moment.
Yes.
More so than ever, I would say.
Yeah. And what I would say to that as a Christian is that for me as a Christian, Christmas Day represents an opportunity to take my eyes off me and my life. And it gives me an opportunity to look upwards and to see a bigger picture and to take joy in that bigger picture. The fact that Christ was born is the thing that gives us the joy of Christmas. I mean, if we are committed to that belief, then it is the birth of Christ that gives us joy, not whether we get to see our families, not whether we, have lost someone, because obviously, that's not going to bring you joy, is it? But it's the birth of Christ that is the source of our joy. That's what we're celebrating. And that means we can celebrate it independent of our circumstances, which isn't to say that your circumstances might suck. I'm not denying that. But Christmas Day actually offers you the opportunity, as it were, to just for a day or for a moment at least, to put down that sadness, to look up and to draw joy in a bigger story. And if you have that belief, you're able to do that.
That's nice. That's very spiritually comforting to think that actually, rather than sit there and dwell on who's not at the table, think of it of a rebirth. Maybe think of it of, the chapter 1.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, as Christians, we see the whole of life as a gift, right? Which, when you realize the full gravity of that statement, it's not just the happy bits that are the gift. It's also the sad bits. And just as the Magi laid their gifts before Christ in the manger, we can also lay our sadness before the Christ child in the manger. And we can say, Lord, this is what I have to offer you. I have this breakup. I have this sense of loss. The people that I love are not around. But I offer it to you, for you to use it. What do you want to do with it? And in that moment of offering it over, there can be both a release, but also an opportunity for growth and an opportunity for healing.
Healing, there's a word. I think when I speak to people, if I get into it, like if it's beyond surface level conversation, and normally if someone's taken the time to come out of their day to sit opposite me, my interviews are never surface level, and I'm also going to show my guest my vulnerability. So in exchange, they do the same. Everyone feels lighter. Everyone gets some kind of value from the conversation. But a lot of people say to me, "You talk like you're in recovery." And when you think of recovery, you think you're a recovering alcoholic or you're a recovering drug addict. And I say to people, we're all in recovery. Every single one of us we're recovering from something that happened to us at a certain age. What it is different depending on the person and the circumstance and the situation. But we're all in recovery. We're recovering from some kind of trauma that took place. And a lot of people, you look inwards, like in your 50s. I know people in their 50s and 60s, and they're looking inwards at their imperfections or things they do that they don't quite like. It all stems back to childhood, a lot of it.
Yeah.
So we're all in recovery from a very young age.
And a lot of the culture of the 70s and 80s was not particularly healthy. And there's a whole generation of people out there that have gone through life without doing metanoia, without doing repentance, without changing their mind. And they've just stalwartly, stubbornly plowed through life, even when the gears have started to grind together. And then they reach a point in their life where everything locks up and the whole thing breaks down.
Implosion.
Yeah. And so it's important. And as Christians, we're taught this, it's important to be constantly doing metanoia, constantly repenting, constantly changing our mind. But obviously, you can't just change your mind endlessly, because then you just become this mulch, this psychological mulch. You've got to have a direction. You've got to have a plumb line, a north star to guide yourself to. And that's Christ for us. Is that when we are adjusting ourselves, we're adjusting ourselves to realign our direction back to Christ. And by this constant reflection and adjustment of putting our life back towards Christ, it allows us to progress towards something. rather than just changing for its own sake in a directionless world. And some people existentially come up with their own ideas about what they're going to change to. And it's like, I'm going to be this kind of man. And they envision what that kind of man is, and then they drive towards it. But I would say anything that's noble is going to be found in Christ. Any greatness is going to be found in Christ. And anything other than directing your life to Christ is going to be to push towards something less noble.
Well, this will move on nicely to my trip to Israel. And also, I've purposely shown some vulnerability at the start of this interview because this is about being honest, and it's Christmas Day, and a lot of people bottle stuff up Christmas Day. They pretend they're okay when they're not. And there'll be people watching this that will probably quite like to hear that even the people that seem the strongest will suffer from time to time. Yeah. And I would say the last 6 months, that's been me. True story. And there's no point me pretending that I've been great when I haven't been, but the future can only get brighter. And you know that I support Christian values. Yeah. You mentioned it at the start of the interview, but you know I don't believe in God. And another reason why I wanted to show some vulnerability at the start of this interview, to let you know where I've been for the last 6 months, celebrate, fucking crying in my own soup. Yeah. If there was going to be a time that I would have found God, it would have been 2025. I even went to Israel. It's funny. You get the fucking numbskulls on X. They think that I'm now funded by the Jews, and I went out to Israel with some kind of agenda. Yeah. I had an opportunity to go there, and I went there to do some soul searching. I went round Jerusalem, and I thought if there's going to be a sign shown to me, it's going to be now. Yeah. I'm as vulnerable as I've been in a very, very long time. I've lost everything that I've loved and fought for and thought I was going to be with forever. Yeah. I'm kind of at that moment in my life where a lot of people tell me when they found God that this was happening. And I've never heard someone say I was on top of the world, like, and all of a sudden I felt it's normally like there's normally trauma involved. Yeah. So if I was going to find God, I think it would have been this year. I haven't found him, but I support Christian values just as much as I did this time last year. And I said to you, then I committed, I said, I'm going to get behind the church because I want Christianity to rise in Britain because if not Christianity, then who? And the alternative is ugly. And the 10 Commandments are beautiful. And the roadmap of the New Testament of Christianity is powerful, and it gives people guidance because I know there's a lot of people lost. You know, I'm someone that's got my shit together and I've lost track. I've lost my path. So I can only imagine how people with no support network that are completely lonely would feel. Yeah. So I'm all for it. So the question is, because I got a bit of backlash for being pro-Christianity but not a Christian. Yeah. People, I can't remember some of the words people used. Not that I gave too much of a fuck, but just interested in what you would think of me getting behind Christianity because I admire the values and the principles of the religion. Yeah. But I don't believe in God, and I don't think I ever will. If I was going to find God, it would have been this year because I've been very, very sad. Yeah.
Just to understand, I just want to make sure I understand the question. The question is, what do I feel about the people giving you backlash because you're getting behind Christianity but not Christian? Is that
no,
the question?
More is, do you think it's hypocritical that I support Christianity but I'm not a Christian?
No.
Simplify it.
No, to simplify it, the term hypocrite comes from the Greek Hippocrates, which refers to a mask that actors in Greek theatre used to wear to represent one persona over another. And so the idea of being a hypocrite is the idea of having two faces, because depending on because Greek theatre is not like how we think of theatre. It just used to be one guy, maybe even two, standing there with masks, and they'd play one character with one mask, and then they'd swap to another character with another mask. And so they would be two-faced. And so hypocrite means to be two-faced. You're not being two-faced. You're being honest. You're being truthful about where you're at and about what you're doing and why you're doing it. That's not a hypocrite. And I would say to these, and I'm pretty sure not all of them are Christian, to be fair, but I would say to some of these kind of puritanical Christians, if there are amongst them of your critics, is that, what would they prefer? Like, would they prefer you to be against the faith? Like, would they prefer you to be in favor of Islam or ethno-nationalism or communism or like what exactly are they wanting you to do instead? I see people like you as allies. You know, I'm not under any illusion. You're not under any illusion that you're a Christian. I'm not pretending that you're a Christian. I think that it is an opportunity for Christians in two ways. One, in the sense of, you know, we're in the fight of our lives right now in the West. And we need to be willing to build alliances to win that fight. And so if people are willing to get behind the Christian cause, then great, that strengthens our cause. But then if so long as you're getting behind what we stand for rather than the other way around.
Which is?
Well, it's like this idea of not being unevenly yoked with the unbeliever. And that's an image from the Old Testament where you had an ox and a donkey pulling a yoke that ploughed a field. The ox is stronger than the donkey, so the plough ends up being, it doesn't go straight.
Right.
It goes in a diagonal. And so this idea within Christianity that we can work with non-Christians so long as they are supporting our agenda.
And they're good people.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, good. Everyone's got issues. Like I'm not so fussed about this good thing. Like everybody's a sinner as far as I'm concerned.
You wouldn't accept Fred West as an ally, for example?
It depends. Is Fred West reformed? Has he repented? Has he done his time?
I'm not sure you can reform from where he went.
But do you see my point? Ian, I genuinely believe that redemption is for everybody.
Well, even people that bury their daughters under the patio.
Even for people that bury their daughters under the patio. There's no bottom. There's no bottom to God's mercy. But that means that they repent. I'm not saying an unrepented Fred West could get involved because he'd be a danger to the public. He needs to be in prison. But a repented Fred West, like a genuinely repented, i.e., someone who's grieving and mourning his sin. Someone who looks at his former self and goes, I hate that man that killed my daughter. And I'll just put it on the table. I do not know the crimes of Fred West. I'm literally just going on what you said.
Oh, do you not know anything about Fred West?
Vaguely. I know it was something to do with killing kids.
He murdered his own children, random females, young girls, prostitutes.
Right. Yeah.
Killed himself in jail. I mean, he's like the worst person I could have picked.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you don't really know much about Fred West because that'll blow people's brains out to think that you'd forgive him just because he...
No. It's not me who forgives. It's God who forgives. But what I'm saying is, if he has genuinely repented, and done his time in prison, which it sounds like his time in prison is for a whole lifespan.
But it ended with a rope in there.
Yeah, well, my point is, let's say I was a prison chaplain and I was in prison and Fred West came into my church, my chapel. I wouldn't turn around to him and said, you can't come in here. This place is not for you. I would say this is exactly the place where you should be, because you're someone who needs healing of the wound of sin, and the wound of sin that you've done is hell-worthy sin. But the point is, this belief that I have in redemption is for everybody. I mean it. It's for the Mohammed Hijabs of this world. It's for the Ali Dawahs of this world. It's for the Fred Wests of this world. It is for the Liam Tuffs of this world. And thanks be to the grace of God.
Don't you fucking rope me in with them.
No. Wait, let me finish the sentence. And by the grace of God, it's for the Bob of Speaker's Corners of this world. There are different levels of sin. It's not that all sin is the same. I don't believe that. Right? Fred West is diabolical. Hitler is satanic. Stalin, satanic. But we've all sinned in our own way. Some of us much further have missed the mark than others. I'm not saying that all sin is the same. I'm not saying that all sin needs to be dealt with in the same way, but sin is a reality in all of our lives.
See, this is why I would never make a proper... This is why I could never be fully religious, because I wouldn't want Fred West in a church. I'd want him in a gas chamber.
Well, I'm not against the death penalty. I am not against the death penalty.
As long as he visits the chaplain first.
Well, I mean, I would give him the opportunity, yeah, but I would be open to the Fred Wests of this world being executed. I'm not against capital punishment, but if the day before his execution, and I was a prison chaplain, Fred West came and said, I want to sit here and pray and I want to try and make my peace with God. I wouldn't turn around and say, you've got no chance. Because that's the shocking mercy of God. That is the shocking mercy of God, Liam, is that it's boundless and it can incorporate anyone who wants to receive it, no matter how large or small the sin that they have to repent for is. When you went to Israel, those nincompoops baptized you in the River Jordan, and I don't think they should have. I think because they didn't do a proper baptism out there.
I can tell you the story if you want.
I'd be interested. Were they Christians? Were they? What was going on there, or was it just like a tourist thing to come and have an experience?
So we've gone to the River Jordan, and there's all these people in the river, all being baptized in their white gown. Now I'm out there soul searching. I'm there for a week. I'm doing the full tour. I was in a headspace where I didn't care if I lived or died. I got 800 metres from Gaza. I wanted to go into Gaza and stick microphones in people's faces and ask them questions. Like, zero fear, zero fucks. If I died, I died. Didn't care, and I mean that. So I thought, wherever I am, I'm just going to embrace wherever I am.
Yeah.
If I was in Gaza,
living in the moment,
I would have embraced Gaza. So as I'm there, people are saying, oh, who's going to get baptised? And there's a queue of people in there. And I said, well, I don't believe in God, so I think it'll be a bit of a liberty if I do get baptised. And I'm storying this.
Yeah.
And they said, well, just go through, and if they say it's okay, then it's okay. So I went into the changing rooms and I got the white gown on, I had my shorts on, and I've storied it, and I've said, I've not even put this cloak on yet because I feel it may be disrespectful because I'm not religious, so being baptised seems like it could be a piss take.
Yeah.
The next cut, okay, I've been given the thumbs up. I can do it for the experience. Who knows? I may well feel the hand of God. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I then get baptised in the River Jordan, and they said what they got to say, the two people, and they dunked me under. And then I come back up, and I do find most things funny. And although I've probably come across like I'm a manic depressive doom and gloom, I'm not.
Yeah, you don't come across like that at all.
No, I've just gone through a rocky road, but I'm just very honest about my feelings.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've come out, thought it was quite funny. And the American guy said, hey, man, it's a new start for you, man. And I said, you got it. So I had a bit of a laugh with him. And then this is all documented in my stories. And then I've said, well, I've been baptised. I don't feel any different because a lot of people, do you feel different? I don't feel in the least bit different. I'm not religious. I experienced it. That was that. Who knows? It could have been the moment that I found God and I didn't. And that was that. And that was done over like 3 or 4 stories. People on X took the one little bit of me getting baptised and then published that Liam Tufts has been baptised. And then
I saw that and I thought, he's become a Christian.
No.
Yeah. But the point is,
I just embraced it.
But it was pure liturgical abuse. Those missionaries, I hope whoever is in charge of them takes them to task. Because the idea that you baptise people for an experience is ridiculous. And it's sinful, and they need to repent of what they've been doing. Like it's almost like they were doing it for the numbers, just so they could send a missionary report back to their pay keep and go, yeah, we baptized 50 people today. And it's like, and if that's what they're doing, they're actually being really terrible missionaries. Because what should happen at a baptism is that you're meant to confess your faith. There are inquisitorial questions before a baptism. Do you believe in God the Father, the creator of heaven and earth? Do you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world? Do you believe in the Holy Spirit who comes from the Father and the Son? And if you say no to that, they shouldn't be baptizing you. Now, you made it very clear right at the beginning you didn't believe in any of that. So they should never have allowed you to get in the water.
Well, I had that conversation with somebody else that was part of the team. The 2 people that actually baptised me.
They should never have let you get into the water.
They didn't ask me a question. That would have been awkward, wouldn't it? I would have gone, no. They would have gone, well, fuck off then.
I mean, maybe in a more polite way, but yeah, that's exactly what should have happened. They should have gone, well, we can't do it then, sorry.
No, I just got in the middle of the 2 of them. They closed their eyes, said a prayer for me, dunked me under, and that was it. And then said, hey, man.
But the point is, Liam, it's an invalid baptism, so it doesn't count. But you wouldn't be the first person that's been baptized in an invalid way.
Can you see the funny side of this at all? Because we did have a good laugh about the life of Brian last time, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And now it's the life of Liam. But no, for me, baptism is a serious thing. And so I'm really upset about the missionaries and about that whole team and about what they're doing out there. And, people need to be correcting them because what they're doing is liturgical abuse. It's no different from a Church of England vicar baptizing a refugee, an illegal migrant, just because he said that he's a Christian, when the vicar knows that he's faking it.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't say I was a Christian either.
Exactly.
I've always been very honest.
Exactly. So, but the point is, this is the same as that, And if it's wrong when a Church of England vicar does it so to help someone's asylum application, then it's still wrong when some cowboy missionary in the US, in Israel, just starts doing it without proper investigation and treatment of like whether people are coming forward for an experience or whether they're coming forward with genuine faith. So, I mean, I don't blame you, I blame them.
And I'm going to take a leaf out of God's book and forgive them.
I don't feel that you're particularly aggrieved in this situation.
No. I see the funny side in everything. Even my own grief. I'll watch this back soon. I'll be sitting at home eating cheese and biscuits on me.
I hope one day, like, were you baptised as a kid?
I was christened.
Right, because that's your baptism, Liam.
I was christened as a child, yeah.
What all that needs to happen is that, at that moment when God opens up your heart, then you confess your faith as Tommy has, that Christ is Lord, and then that baptism that you had as a child is your baptism. It counts. It's just a confirmation of faith is all that you require.
Yeah, my mum got me christened. I think that was just the thing to do back then, wasn't it?
It was, but it still counts. We don't believe in multiple baptisms. We don't believe, in the Creed it says we believe in one baptism for the forgiveness of sins, not we believe in several baptisms and a couple of dunkings and a few experiential moments in the River Jordan for the forgiveness of sins. It's just one baptism. Wow. So you've already been baptized. All that is required is when you're ready to commit yourself to Christ as King, then you make that public declaration of faith, and that is your confirmation of faith.
I want to come to the King down the line, but first of all, you mentioned the Church of England. I heard you refer to the Church of England as a prostitute.
Yeah, she is.
Elaborate on that.
So the Church of England was set up by Henry VIII for the sole purpose of legitimising his rule whilst he did unchristian things. And that is exactly what the Church of England did. And from that day forward, the Church of England has always been the prostitute of the English state and the English elites. Now, when those English elites were themselves Christians, that wasn't terrible. Like, it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible, because the people that the Church of England was prostituting itself were themselves Christian. Now, fast forward from Henry VIII's day to our day, the Church of England is still getting on its back and being ploughed by the English establishment every night, but now it's doing it for non-Christian elites, which means that the Church of England is pushing non-Christian agendas into the public and dressing it up as Christianity. So when the Church of England pushes gay marriage, trans ideology, extreme forms of environmentalism, open door policies, despite the fact that it criticised the Tommy Robinson Christmas Carol as co-opting Christian language and symbols to push right-wing politics, they've been pushing progressive liberal politics in their sermons for decades. And the Church of England is doing that because it is an it's unfaithful. It's a fruitless branch of the tree. Or a fruitless branch, vine of the tree. And if it doesn't repent and if it doesn't recommit itself to an authentic Christianity, it will just be pruned off like the Quakers were pruned off, and it will lose its Christian identity, which it is doing at an increasingly rapid pace.
So would you consider the Church of England a weak, woke prostitute?
It's its service to the British elites that has made it a prostitute.
A whore.
It is a whore, yeah. The Church of England is a whore. It sacrifices faithfulness to Jesus.
Like a King's Cross whore, like £25 a blowjob type whore.
Something like that, yeah, basically. It sacrifices faithfulness to Jesus for the reputation of being the established church. At every turn, when the Church of England had to make a choice between remaining a large institution across the country or shrinking as an institution and being faithful to Jesus, it always chose the institution itself over Jesus. And the way that it did that is to keep in with the elites, it had to keep pace with what the elites wanted to do. So the Church of England surrendered on the idea of Sunday Sabbath laws. The Church of England surrendered on divorce laws. The Church of England surrendered on abortion laws, contraception laws, homosexual. It wants to surrender on homosexual marriage. It wants to surrender on trans ideology. It has surrendered on the idea of multiculturalism, a liberal form of multiculturalism. So it has abandoned, and none of these values can be traced back to a Christian doctrine, because your values always come from your doctrines.
Will most Christians be offended that we're referring to the Church of England as a whore, or will most Christians agree?
My language is strong.
And Christmassy.
And Christmassy, like my language is strong, but like, well, I mean, Christmas was accompanied with a murder of innocents, and many of the bishops of the Church of England support the murder of innocents through abortion. The future non-Archbishop of England, Sarah, I can't pronounce her surname, Mulagay, or it's a really complicated, I don't know how to pronounce her surname. But Sarah, who's going to cosplay as the Archbishop, is someone who says that she's broadly in favour of abortion. That's the murder of innocents. We actually commemorate the murder of innocents at Christmas. We have songs commemorating the murder of innocents at Christmas, because at Christmas, the Holy Family had to flee into Egypt to run away from state persecution. And that resulted in a massacre at Bethlehem, where the children of Bethlehem were killed as Herod was trying to kill the Christ.
With abortion,
yeah.
Before we go back to the King and also Tommy Robinson's Christmas event, what's a Christian view on, say, two heroin addicts accidentally conceive a baby and it's got no future, no life, and in fact, it'll actually be born a heroin addict? Is there some leeway where you think actually abortion is the best idea here?
Life from conception, no exception. So it means there's no justification for abortion.
What about if someone's raped and they fall pregnant accidentally?
Yeah, there's no justification for abortion.
That's fucking heavy.
There's no justification for abortion. There is no grounds upon which you can justify the murder of a child. None. The child is not responsible for the heroin addiction that it's about to have from the parents. The child is not responsible for the fact that the father is a rapist. The child is never to blame. So why should the child suffer the consequences of the adult's actions? What should happen in the case of the heroin addict is that the mother be put into 24-hour guard and forced off heroin for the protection of the child. What should happen is that the rapist goes to prison and the mother receives counselling and support and the opportunity to give up the child for adoption and fostering at birth. That's what should happen. The child is never to blame. So why would we punish the child for the actions of adults?
It'd be interesting to read the comments section on this bit here. I'm sure that there'll be...
Always wins me friends.
Yeah. I was going to say...
the Fred West comment will lose me friends. It's very but
you're in deep shit for that.
Yeah. Well, it's still the Christian truth, and we've got to say Christian truth regardless of whether it's popular or unpopular.
Yeah,
what kind of society do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a society that says we're going to sacrifice children for us, for what we want? Particularly amongst a lot of your subscribers and your viewers within the patriotic movement, it is abortion that's killing the English. The English are not being replaced, they are committing suicide.
Yeah, the government should incentivise families to have more children.
Absolutely.
The more children, the less tax. Like
Yes.
we need more babies, more children.
Yeah.
You know, we have to keep up with our competition. Not just for that, it's a beautiful, lovely thing, and it makes a house a home.
Yeah, it's not about, I mean, I wouldn't say get married for the sake of the competition. What I would say is get married because that is the right way that is the best way to bring up children. And it is also the very building block of society. I often get enraged when I hear social commenters talking about this problem in society and that problem in society and this problem in society. And no one ever mentions the breakdown of the family. The family, I give one example from my own life. My own family, we have an auntie, my auntie, who was born perfectly healthy. And then when she had her whooping cough injection, it was a faulty batch. And she was badly brain damaged because of, they don't say brain damage now, there's some other politically correct term, but who cares? She was brain damaged because of the injection. Now, my family, rather than they everyone in my family built their lives around my auntie, right? She became the center of everybody's world, and you're just born into it. It's like the family religion. Like my auntie is the center, and we all organize ourselves to support and to look after her. If you factor how much money we saved the state through caring for my auntie 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because she can't live independently. She has to be cared for 24 hours a day. And we've saved the state millions of pounds, millions. And that's just one family. One of the reasons why everything in our society is getting worse is because of the breakdown of the family. Bed blockers. You know, old age pensioners in hospital beds that can't go home because they've got no one to care for them.
Yeah.
Why have they got no one to care for them? Breakdown of the family. Gangs of youths in East London running around like rabid animals, stabbing one another and pushing, where's their fathers? Where's their mothers? It's the breakdown of the family. The increase in mental health problems. And I have a friend who's a clinical psychologist, and we talked about this, and she agrees with me that one of the reasons why you've got an increase in mental health problems is because of the breakdown of the family.
Totally agree.
And so, and the Holy Family of the Christmas story shows us that, families can include adopted children, but it also shows us that it's about the mother and the father and the children being a unit. It is the bedrock of how you build a successful and happy society. And our country, because of liberalism and because of classical liberalism, has emphasized individualism over the family for economic reasons. Because if you can break up the family, you create more consumers. And this is where the Church of England presents itself as a prostitute, because the Church of England has gone along with that. The Church of England doesn't defend the family, can't even be bothered to defend children unborn. It doesn't want to even defend the sacrament of marriage as between man and woman. It doesn't, so the Church of England, this is why I say the Church of England is a prostitute, because her first lord is whoever's in charge of the British state. And then Jesus is a second lord who they serve so long as the state doesn't say, don't do this.
What about King Charles then? If the Church of England is a prostitute, is King Charles its pimp?
No. King Charles is just a badly informed Christian. And again, I think that it's back and maybe family interest has taken precedence within the royal family over faithfulness to Christ. Because countless kings have professed the Christian faith and have gone along with the slide in our society when they could have done more to resist it, even if it might have caused a constitutional crisis. And so it gets to a point where they become culpable themselves by not speaking out more, and so King Charles is someone, and I'm interpreting him charitably, that I think has been badly raised in the Christian faith. He's been badly discipled. Discipleship means you learn what it is to be a Christian, and then you learn how to live it out. And there's been things missing in King Charles' discipleship. Tommy Robinson has just become a Christian. He's going to have to go through a process of discipleship. I'm still going through a process of discipleship. I've still got shit in my own life to work out, and things to change about me. And so it's a never-ending thing. And the thing that drives you forward is that metanoia, that changing of the mind, that repentance. And King Charles has just been badly discipled because he's been raised by a church that is itself fundamentally compromised.
Yeah, how the kings have changed. When you think years ago, you'd get the king on the back of a horse, front line, fighting with his people. Could you imagine King Charles doing that? No,
of course not. Of course not. But to be fair, that practice, I think, stopped in the 1700s. It was the last king to die at the front line. I think, I might be wrong on this, it was maybe 1600s, 1500s. So it's been a long time since.
I still like to think of my king as a man with a big hairy chest.
We
and a
do.
stiff upper
Well,
lip.
that's the point, because men want men to follow.
Yeah.
Men want men to follow, and that's part of the problem that's going wrong in our society is that
we've weakened.
We've each gone our own way because we've stopped following the true man. We've stopped following that northern star.
See, I think community is king. I think community is king. And you was recently at the Christmas event that Tommy Robinson put on under the Unite the Kingdom umbrella, which I'm fully in support of because, and I'm glad that you've been there because I've never been part of any movement, any group, but there's no denying that Unite the Kingdom movement is beautiful. Now you tell me, you've got people behind the stage with stand up to racism placards. You was on the stage, you looked out into the crowd of a few thousand people that were there. Did it look like a white supremacist gathering?
No, of course it wasn't. I mean, it gets to the point where it almost becomes performative to have this conversation because it's so blatantly obvious.
And it's ridiculous I've even got to say this.
I know. And just the sheer hypocrisy of these people. And if you'll allow me a Christmas rant. So everybody tuck into your drink, take a good swig of the port or the beer or whatever you're drinking.
I'm actually going to have a swig of port right now.
Right. It is just the sheer level of conceited hypocrisy. So let's start off with the prostitute. She says that, Tommy Robinson is co-opting Christian language and Christian imagery for right-wing politics, that just because he became a Christian doesn't mean that he has the right to use Christianity to advance his political perspective on refugees. That's what's come from the diocese elites, right? What hypocrites. They, outside of St. Paul's Cathedral, they had their own Christmas carol service in which they presented the Holy Family as fleeing as refugees on a dinghy. How is that not using Christian image and Christian language to push an open doors, i.e. a left-wing political perspective? They have pushed transgenderism, gay marriage. They've pushed multiculturalism. These are all left-wing agenda points, and the Church of England has never felt an ounce of embarrassment by using Christian language and Christian imagery to present their left-wing political narrative. Just the sheer hubristic hypocrisy of it all. And what it strikes to me is that these people are conceited and they live in ivory towers. And I'll put this offer to you, Liam. If you can get any of those bishops or clergy to come into this room and debate me on these kinds of questions, and I'll demonstrate to them just how little they've thought out what they are saying. Because the question of levels of immigration, of who you let into your country, under what conditions, under what circumstances, these are prudential questions. It means that it is down to us to work it out. There's nothing in Scripture that supports the idea of open borders. In fact, the Scriptures very clearly do not support the idea of open borders. Like that is, you can't justify an open border worldview from Scripture. And imagine presenting our Lord in such a way that you're now almost trying to wrap up human trafficking in the imagery of the Holy Family. and you're trying to say that the Holy Family paid a human trafficker to help them smuggle themselves illegally into another country. The Holy Family went from Judea into Egypt. Both of those places were within the Roman Empire. This is not a refugee. This is an internally displaced person fleeing from state persecution. So let's talk about state persecution. You've got Christians who are being arrested for thinking outside of abortion clinics. You've got Christians who are being arrested for protesting against abortion. You've had Christians being arrested for preaching the gospel. You've had Christians lose their government jobs because they didn't agree with LGBTQ politics. You've got Christians losing their jobs because they didn't go agree with multiculturalism. You've got Christians being fined, threatened with imprisonment for expressing normal Christian doctrines, and you have the state telling them what parts of the Bible they can and they can't quote. You've got Christians who have had to flee Reading and Bradford because they were Muslim who became Christian, and the intolerance of certain members of the Muslim community meant that it was no longer safe for them to stay in their city. And in all of these examples, the Church of England has never found anything to say. Never. The reason why they're jumping on this is because they've seen an opportunity, due to Tommy Robinson's celebrity, to try and make themselves relevant. Otherwise, no one would listen to them. And they're jumping on this because in their desire for reflected glory, for vain glory, they're trying to present themselves as standing up against something evil when they've allowed countless examples of evil to go unchallenged. It's just pure hypocrisy.
And they've not read the room very well. It was September, Tommy galvanised 3 million people to come together.
Yeah.
Community is king. Well, there you go. There's a huge community right there. Also, you stood on the stage, you looked into the crowd. Is it safe to say that the races are mixed, but the culture is the same?
Yes, and that's the point.
That is the point. And multiculturalism does not work.
Liberal multiculturalism does not work.
British culture works as long as it's the top of the spear, and all the other cultures come in and they respectfully remember that they're not top dog, they're second, third, fourth in the pecking order.
Well, I mean, I believe.
Do you agree with that?
I believe in a Christian state. So I'm a Christian nationalist, which is, a term that probably needs some clarification. And I'll clarify that if you want to. But ultimately,
I want to talk about Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
Civnats and ethnats.
Yes.
How you define them all and your views on them all. And you can just go on another rant now if needs be.
Right. So
another sip of port, sir?
Yes. Another sip of port. So let's get into it. So firstly, the spectrum of right-wing politics is not monolithic. You would think that it is if you speak to a Corbynite, Jeromanista communist, but it isn't. They are there are theocrats. On the right, there are technocrats.
What's theocracy? Someone that wants religion to rule the country.
It's the idea that you organise your state according to a religious principle.
Okay.
Right? So that's me. Yeah, I'm a theocrat.
Yeah.
Then you've got technocrats, people, like Elon Musk. He thinks technology is going to answer every problem. Then you've got libertarians, which is where we start getting towards Margaret Thatcher kind of thinking, a free market. The market will answer everything, I mean, slight distinction. You've got free marketeers, which is a form of libertarianism, and then you've got actual libertarians, which is like we want a tiny, 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 tiny state, virtually no state, just let people almost just govern themselves, kind of thing. And then you've got ethno-nationalists, the idea that you organise society according to an ethnicity. Then you've got civic nationalists, which is, where I'd put Tommy Robinson. I mean, he might disagree with me, and he's entitled to, but that's where I see him. He's a civic nationalist, which is this idea that you've got this institution called the United Kingdom. It's got its own history. We should be proud of it. We should support it, and we should do our best to build a great civic society that continues the history of that civic society from when it was founded, So that's the first thing. There's the right is not one monolithic block. And then there's different forms of understanding what nationalism is. So you've got ethno-nationalists, which is this idea that the nation is an ethnicity. So there is this nation called the English, and it's the English people who have a common history, live in a common land, speak a common language, have generally similar characteristics and features. And then when you chuck in a bit more extra science in there, they'll even start talking about genomes and things like that, as if Alfred the Great knew anything about genetics. Then you've got civic nationalists, which I've just explained, and then you've got Christian nationalists. Now, Christian nationalism is a new term. It's emerged, as all things in British culture do, as a term in America first, and then we just adopt it later. As we do. And Christian nationalism is the idea that Christ founds a nation, the church, the covenant people of God, and that they are a nation. The church is a nation, so it's a spiritual nation, or rather, it's a real nation that is united by a common spirituality. And that's the kind of Christian nationalism that I advocate. And connected to our passage here, it's relevant, because one of the titles that is given to Jesus is Eternal Father. Now, if you listen carefully, I've said multiple times that Jesus is the Son of the Eternal Father. So why is Jesus being called the Eternal Father? It's because he's being called the Eternal Father in the sense that both in the Old Testament and still today, you have this concept of the founding father. Bolivar was the founding father of many Latin American states. George Washington was one of the founding fathers of the United States. King Alfred was the founding father of the English kingdom. Christ is the father of an eternal kingdom. He establishes an eternal kingdom. He establishes an eternal nation. And that is the Christian people, the Christian community. And so I think that the church needs to advocate, and these kinds of nationalisms, and I'm coming into land, these kind of nationalisms, Christian nationalism can have no truck at all with ethno-nationalism because it contradicts the Catholicity of the state. But Christian nationalists and civic nationalists can actually synergize. And the reason for that is if the civic nationalists are willing to agree with Christians that the character and confession of the nation state is Christian, then we can work together. And that's what Tommy Robinson is advocating, those kind of politics. Jordan Peterson is advocating those kind of politics. It's this idea that, the state of Canada, the state of the UK is a Christian country and therefore should be Christian in its institutions. And that's something that a Christian nationalist can completely agree with. And so Christian nationalists and civic nationalists can work together and forge an alliance to the common purpose of creating a Christian Britain.
So, for example, you wouldn't, in an ideal world, you wouldn't allow a Muslim to become a British MP?
Actually, we're world creating now. So we're imagining the success of this project. We've created a Christian country. And if that project was successful, there would be debates like that very question to be had. And my answer, I'd probably find myself on the liberal side of that spectrum.
Right.
Funnily enough, even though lots of people say you're like some crazy extremist. Actually, if there was a Christian state in place, I'd probably be on the left side of that discussion point, because I would say that so long as the Muslim MP is committed and makes a personal commitment and then demonstrates that in all their actions and words in public office to maintaining the Christian character of the country, because there's a lot that a Muslim could get behind within a Christian worldview, then they could be an MP. But if they were doing something to undermine the Christian character of the country, they would be barred from being an MP.
Would you let them be sworn into Parliament on the Qur'an?
Well, I actually don't think that people should have to place their hand on anything. Jesus said, swear not by anything in earth or in heaven. Do not even swear by your own head, because you cannot count. You cannot turn one hair on your head grey. Don't swear by heaven, for that is where the throne of God is, and don't swear by anything on earth, because it's his footstool. So I don't believe that we should swear on anything.
So would you remove religious scripture from politics completely?
No. I mean, we're talking about what you do with an oath.
Yes.
When you put your hand on a Bible, what you're saying is that you're recognizing the sacredness of this thing, and what you're saying is that by the sacredness of this thing, because it is more important than me, I'm placing my word upon it, and so because I don't want to desecrate it, I swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Right? I'm saying, as Jesus said, is just be an honest man. And if you're an honest man, you don't need to swear. And so if we find that someone's acting duplicitously, i.e. they've said that they will uphold the Christian character of the nation, but then they start trying to argue to reintroduce cousin marriages, because that would be outlawed in a Christian country. So to give a working example, a Muslim MP in a Christian state would vote against, would oppose cousin marriages. And if they didn't oppose cousin marriages, then they would be barred from being an MP.
Right.
As a working example of what it means to be a Muslim MP in a Christian country.
So they really need to change most of their belief system to qualify as an MP.
They would have to be willing at least to privatize their religion in public office. You know, so they could hold in their mind and in their heart that cousin marriages are okay, but they would recognize that they're in a Christian country, and in the Christian country, they don't get to dictate what the law is. And so in a Christian country, they are going to uphold Christian values. And if they are doing that in public office, because there is a lot in Christianity that a Muslim can support, you know, so long as they do that, they could operate within public office.
What about, let's use England as an example, in an ideal world.
In a world-creating scenario.
Yeah. Is there a percentage, like a cap percentage of indigenous Brits that should be stuck to?
Right. So firstly, the idea of indigenous Brits...
Because FNATs want 100%, didn't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure they'd say English rather than Britain, no?
Yes.
Because Britain is a legal construct.
True enough.
It's not an ethnic construct. And the whole... I've been having this to do with ethno-nationalists on my Twitter account at the moment, you know, because I find myself now evangelizing ethno-nationalists along with Muslims, and they're equally bad debaters. But their whole narrative is based on a fictitious reading of English history. When Alfred the Great founded the kingdom of, you know, when Alfred the Great launched his crusade against the great heathen army and Dane law, you know, those foreign invaders that were bringing a foreign god and a foreign legal system to these islands, Alfred the Great fought to defend. He didn't fight to defend being English, because that thing didn't exist. He fought to defend Christianity. Alfred the Great and his army understood themselves as having a religious war. And amongst the English already, there were different Saxon groups, but there were also Jutes and Angles. There were the descendants of Celts who had intermarried with the Saxons. So it was already a mixed multitude, as it says in Exodus, you know. And when he eventually was victorious, and his son and his grandson went on to complete the crusade that conquered all of England, and his grandson was declared Rex Angelorum, there were lots of Scandinavian migrants, you know, invaders, who had colonized entire sections of the north of England, the northwest of England particularly. And it was, and he united them in a singular kingdom. And the thing that united these different groups, the migrants with the now indigenous, and I say now indigenous because the Saxons themselves had invaded in the 4th century and were themselves migrant invaders. The thing that brought about their unity was Christianity. It amalgamated these different ethnicities into a singular culture. And that's the solution to our problems in the UK is not multiculturalism, but a Christian monoculture, that can unite different groups into a singular nation. And I say that deliberately, into a singular nation, because I'm a Christian nationalist. I believe in a nation born of the blood of Christ, the waters of baptism, and the fire of the Spirit. These are all spiritual terms. I don't believe in a blood and soil kind of nation. And in a spiritual nation, people can be united by their common doctrines, which lead to common values, which lead to common outlooks on life, and then later can develop into common customs and common culture. And that's the vision of Britain that we need, so that Christ might be that we might participate in the nation of heaven, under the eternal Father Jesus Christ, the Father of the nation.
So principles, attitudes, beliefs, that's your main focal point on bringing people together and how the country should be moving forward.
Yeah, and the thing is, within that, the ethno-nationalist, I might have lost a little bit your original question here, and I'm sorry if I've gone off track a bit. But the idea that you've got this pure blood nation, is ridiculous. There's never been a pure blood nation. Like, the people back at the time when the Saxons came over didn't think about genetics. There's always been a mixing of tribes. Like, that's normal. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, do I believe that there's an upper number, right? Well, let's change Brits to English, because then we can have a more sensible conversation, because anyone given a passport can be British, right? Whether they should be given a passport is a different question. But anyone who gets a passport can be British.
Yeah, stick with England.
But
I should have said England.
Yeah. So if we're talking about England English, then I would say that the ethno-nats have already stopped being English, because they've already denied their Christian heritage. And that if we are true to that Christian heritage, then other tribes, other nations can be grafted into the English, because the Bible teaches that. When Israelites left Egypt, they left with a mixed multitude. In other words, there were Egyptians and Nubians who came with them, and they became a singular nation, Israel. This is really important, because ethno-nats often talk about the ethno-nation state of Israel. But they forget that Israel was born of a mixed multitude. Moses married an Egyptian. Jesus, in his own ancestry, has non-Jews listed in his own ancestry. So he was not some pure-blood Jew. And in Romans, it teaches that the Gentiles can be grafted onto Israel. So the Bible teaches the idea that you can bring different tribes together and form them into a singular nation, which is what Alfred the Great did. And we need a similar project. We need an Alfred the Great kind of project in England, that we drop all this liberal nonsense about multiculturalism as a failed experiment, and we say, you can stay here, but you have to integrate. And what do you integrate? Then to make that insistence, you then have to give people a clear vision of what you're integrating into, and that has to be Christianity. And then we would lean on English Christianity heavily, because that's the history of this country, and that's the history of the expression of Christianity in this country. And we would lean heavily on English Christianity to express what this Christianity looks like for everybody to integrate into.
And as a non-Christian, cultural Christian, I wholeheartedly agree. I want to move on to the Christian genocide in Nigeria. You've been speaking about this long before anybody knew it existed. I think the last time we met, you were talking about it in graphic detail.
Yeah.
I'd like to know the update on that Christian genocide in Nigeria. And also, I always think to myself, if it can happen in that country,
Yep.
it can happen in this country. So what's the update on the genocide in Nigeria, and how can we prevent that ever happening in the UK?
I mean, and this is the thing. You see it in microcosm, in the sense that we, in the UK and in Australia and in other places, we have seen people support terrorism abroad. They supported the Hamas invasion of Israel and the massacre of 7th of October. And we've had people celebrating that in the UK. only an absolute buffoon would not realize instantly that if they can support terrorism abroad, they can support terrorism here. And that's exactly what happened with Palestine Action. You know, they sledgehammer some poor police officer. And it's kind of like, well, these are people that supported terrorism abroad. They support terrorism here. We have people here that are obfuscating, denying, and even supporting the genocide in Nigeria. So it doesn't take much logic to realize that those kinds of people would all support similar actions here as well. And we can't pretend it's some tiny minority, because look at how many people have mustered to support Hamas. You know, it's a significant number. It is a minority, but it's a significant minority. And the reality is that since, and I welcome Trump's comments. I welcome the fact that he's brought media attention to it, and that he said he's going to act. And I just want to say, if please someone clip this next statement and get it to Trump. He must act soon. What is the delay? We know it's going on. Tens of thousands of Christians have been butchered. And since his comment, the attacks have intensified.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've intensified.
What's that, like a statement of defiance?
It's more like by him saying, we're going to do something about it.
Well, it's a fucking act of defiance, isn't it?
It is. And the attacks in Nigeria are intensifying. More Christians have been killed in Nigeria than have died in Palestine. From the 7th of October, when Hamas attacked Israel, more Christians have died in Nigeria from that date to this than Palestinians have died in Gaza.
On what scale is this genocide? How many numbers? And who's
entire villages?
And who's committing the genocide?
It's been carried out by jihadis, radical jihadis, who have wiped out entire villages, entire complexes, and entire Christian populations have just been butchered. And Islamization and the Islamist ideology have penetrated so much of the Nigerian state that there are state actors. Not every member of the Nigerian establishment is a state actor, but there are state actors who are Islamists who are helping the jihadists on the ground, who are acting against Nigerian law, but they're being helped by members operating within the state to carry out the genocide. And the world needs to act, and it needs to act fast, and it needs to be stopped. And how do we stop it here? We stop it. How do we stop? Because Islamism isn't as developed here as it is in Nigeria, because it's all about proportions of people.
Yet.
Well, this is my point. It's all about proportions of people. There's a percentage of Muslims who are radical Islamists. As the overall number of Muslims increase as a general population, even though roughly the percentage of Muslims who are radical Islamists stays the same, it grows as an actual number, right? And so the British state have been following a policy of trying to poison the water to get rid of the fish. It's kind of like they've tried to turn the general Muslim population against Islamist ideology so that it's rejected. But the point is, that strategy clearly is not working. What happened at Bondi Beach is demonstrating that this strategy is not working. There was a bishop who was attacked in Australia, Bishop Mary. He was attacked in Australia by an Islamist. If the Australian state had taken that attack more seriously and gone, hey, we've got something we need to deal with here, look at this Christophobic attack on this bishop, rather than just writing it off, Bondi Beach, which is by far a much more terrible attack, could have been stopped. But the problem with the liberal elites is that because of their belief that you've got an individual contract with the state and I've got an individual contract with the state, whenever someone breaks that contract because they're an Islamist, the liberal elites go, well, that's just a bad individual. They don't see the pattern. They don't see the root.
They must do by now.
Well, they're living in denial. They're living in denial. And also, I think there are members of the establishment that don't believe there is a problem. There's members of the establishment that recognize that there is a problem, but then deny it to themselves, though they feel it. And then there's a part of the establishment that sees that there's a problem, but their liberalism gives them no answers. Like they cannot think of a solution.
Did you see the president's statement he made after the Bondi Beach attack? He started talking about the rise of far right being a threat.
Yeah, well, that isn't always the liberal go-to thing.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, and the reason is the state fears the reaction from these events. You know, because that event is now over. The Bondi Beach attack is over. The next thing that's going to happen is the reaction to it. And that's why it's always Islamist terrorist attack. Now let's talk about the far right and the dangers of the far right. Yeah, because obviously when there is a terrorist attack, the ethno-nationalists jump on trying to stir up racial bullshit.
Do you know what? As far as the ethnics go as well, they seem to be a tremendous force online, but I don't see a great deal of them gathering together on the streets.
They're not. They're not a strong force. They're tiny. They're numbered in hundreds. They just look and sound bigger than they are because they sort of group into the same social.
Make a lot of noise.
They make a lot of noise, but they're not numerous. But coming back to the question of what we can do about it.
Yeah, how we need to prevent this happening in the UK because I can see bad things happening.
Well, here's some solutions that I will just chuck out there. One, the liberal establishment needs to get serious about combating entryism, and that is of Islamist penetration into state institutions. They need to recognise that it's happening. They need to recognise that it can happen, and they need to come up with strategies to prevent it. Now, you can't do that from a liberal secular worldview because in a liberal secular worldview, everybody's got to have their own culture. But if you have a confessional state that says we have a Christian culture here and we stand for Christian values here, then you'll easily start to pick up when someone's not lining up with that Christian confession and you can stop them from entering the state. And even if one of them does enter the state, they'll be completely bound up. They won't be able to do anything because the moment they step out of line, boom, they're out.
Because what is Islamic migration currently doing to Christianity, legal and illegal? What could it potentially do? Because it's completely out of control.
The British state has lost control of the southern border and the EU has lost control of its own borders. That's absolutely sure. What increased Islamic migration is doing for the church is increasing the threat that Christians feel in the UK. And it's not necessarily that they feel it because their leaders in the Church of England are telling them that there is no threat. But, there's increasing attacks on churches. There is discrimination against Christians in our society coming from members of the Muslim community. And the more Muslims you bring in, they bring with them their prejudice against Christians. If you go to any Muslim country in the world, Christians are being persecuted. Christians are being discriminated against. It's just a normal part of the course of life for a Christian in a Muslim part of the world to suffer discrimination, to suffer persecution. So if you then import unknown numbers of unknown men from that society, they're not just going to check out their anti-Christian prejudices at the border. They're going to bring them with them, just like we've seen a sharp spike in anti-Semitism in this country, because anti-Semitism is rife across the Muslim world. And so what it's doing is it's increasing the risk to the Christian population. It does give us the opportunity to evangelize, obviously, but I would say that the risks outweigh the benefits, and we need to have filters on who we allow into this country. And one of those filters, we should have economic filters that say, okay, what skills are you bringing? What are you offering? Are you in a position to integrate? Can you speak the language? But then we also need to have a cultural filter, which says, are you bringing with you anti-Christian attitudes? Are you bringing with you anti-Jewish attitudes? Are you bringing with you homophobia? Are you bringing with you racism? And anyone who falls foul, because I'd bar members of the Ku Klux Klan from emigrating to the UK from America. And why members of the Ku Klux Klan. I'd bar them. But I would also bar someone who thinks that he wants to have Sharia law in the UK from coming to the UK. So, and that's on the question of all legal migration. When it comes to refugees, again, it would have to be a question of how many people can we absorb in a sustainable way. That needs to be one of the factors. Because if we've got a policy of integration, then you can only integrate a certain number of people at a time. And you need to manage those levels to allow for integration. And that's what we've lost all control of in this country. And we're seeing the effects now of entryism into public institutions of people that do not share the values and the cultural outlook that we have had here historically. And so we've ended up with a ridiculous situation of Jews being banned from a British city, in the UK on faulty grounds about them being thugs, on fake reports.
Aston Villa.
Yeah, so the fact is the Liberals don't have an answer to this because their ideology cannot see patterns. All it does is see individuals. And so it refuses, and it has also it also refuses to accept that some religions teach one thing and other religions teach another. In the liberal mindset, all religions are the same. And that's just sloppy, idle thinking. All religions are not the same.
So what's your take on the theory that the elite Jews are controlling this mass migration?
Yeah, it's such...
There's a lot of people beating that drum. I can't work out.
It was the ethno-nats, and they'll be all over the comments of this video, I'm quite sure, pushing that ridiculous nonsense.
Because I asked these questions in Israel, and I also asked them, is there a possibility that the Israeli government orchestrated that attack so you could return fire with gusto? I asked all these questions.
Yeah. Well, I know that there are Jews who think that the solution to the Gaza problem is that they all just leave Gaza. There definitely are Jews who think like that. But that doesn't represent, it's not like you can take the view of some Jews and then ascribe it to all Jews. And this is the problem that ethno-nationalists make, is that they go, well, he's Jewish, and so therefore what he stands for, all Jews stand for. And that kind of logic is rubbish because the Jews that are part of the Western elite system are hardly disciples of Moses. They're more the disciples of Marx. And they're not just, it's not just, if there are any Jews involved in the Western progressive elites, it's not just that they're just Jews. There's more non-Jews that are advocating for anything, for any example of a Jew that's arguing for open borders, you can find 100 non-Jewish white middle-class women arguing for open borders. The idea that you can say that Jews are responsible for something that we're doing to ourselves is ridiculous. Yes, there are some Jews amongst the progressive elites, but there are also some Jews who support Tommy Robinson. There are also some Jews who are going to be voting reform the next election.
The whole Jew theory has become a bit of a
stupid,
bit of a ridiculous phenomena. You can't say anything against Hamas without loving the Jews. You can't go to Israel to investigate without loving the Jews. For the record, those Hasidic Jews, I couldn't fucking stand them. I couldn't believe how rude they were.
Yeah,
there you go. I love the Jews, do I? I couldn't fucking stand them ones.
Well,
just would look right through you like... If I go somewhere, I'm acutely aware that I'm the guest.
Yeah.
Wherever I go, so I change the expression on my... And I sort of come across as thankful when I make it clear that I'm a guest here and this is your turf, not mine. But those ones with the funny sideburns would just look right through me as if I wasn't even there, and some would look right through me like I was a piece of shit. So I didn't particularly like... those ones.
You're right.
For the record.
They weren't particularly hospitable.
But I don't think they like their other Jews either, do they?
I'm not an expert of all the cultures of, all the various cultures within Judaism. It's not an area that I've studied since university, to be fair. But what I would say is that the ethno-nats who push these binary ideas. Well, because you're against Hamas, therefore you're is it a shill they call it?
Yes.
A shill for Israel.
You're an Israeli shill, and you're getting paid $7,000 to post that.
Yeah, exactly. It's such simplistic binary thinking. Why can't there be why can't there be other options? How about this option? Israel, if it's a problem at all for Christians in the Middle East, it's a regional problem. Hamas is a movement that's going to be a problem if it succeeds for Christians everywhere around the world. So Hamas is a bigger problem, a more pertinent threat to deal with. How about this? Israel, if it is a problem for Christians in the Middle East, it is only a problem for Christians in the Middle East because they think that it is to the benefit and security of the state of Israel to be said problem. So we change the dials so that Israel in its calculus goes, actually, it's in the best interests of Israel's security for us to be an ally of all Christians in the Middle East. The thing is, you can negotiate with Israel. You can't negotiate with Hamas because Hamas is religiously committed to the idea of the domination of Sharia law across the world. Israel, as a nation state, just cares about guaranteeing its own security and its borders, which means that you can lean on Israel and go, actually, for you to continue to receive American support, you need to be an ally of all Christians in the Middle East. And like that, Israel would become an ally of all Christians in the Middle East.
This will be a bit of a conundrum for the conspiracy theorists to accuse you of being funded by the Jews, being the most prominent
Well, I wish they'd give
Christian
me a
in the
pay
country.
rise. I feel a bit underfunded.
Let's go back to Christmas.
Okay.
Compare a secular Christmas with a Christ-focused Christmas.
So, the thing about the Christ-focused Christmas is that it doesn't depend upon the food on the table. It doesn't depend on the Christmas gifts under the Christmas tree. It doesn't depend on who you get to share it with. It is the celebration in our own heart and in our own soul that 2,000 years ago, Christ, the Savior, was born. And that is something that we can do no matter what our circumstances are. There may be other things that detract, that take a bit of the glow out of that joy, but a Christ-centered Christmas is one that upholds Christ and lifts up Christ, that takes our gaze off our world and looks up to Jesus and celebrates the fact that he was born on earth. Gaudete, gaudete, Christus ex Maria Virgine. Christus natus ex Maria Virgine. Celebrate Christ is born of Mary. And that is, and it is something that we can celebrate in, and it's something that we uphold, and it's something that we lift up, and it's something that we declare. So it's above our everyday circumstance. Whereas a secular Christmas is all about the turkey and the presents and the people and the fluff of Christmas. These things can add to the joy of a Christ-centered Christmas, no doubt. But if the presents are, if the presents are a problem, or the meal is a problem, or even your guests are a problem, your Christmas could be ruined. But a Christian's Christmas could never be ruined, because our joy is not found in these fluff. It's found in just remembering what happened in Bethlehem, and just reenacting the story, retelling the story, taking joy in the story, taking hope in the story of what happened 2,000 years ago. Whereas the fluffy secular Christmas is a commercial Christmas. And that's why Tommy Robinson's carol service was needed, because we are living in a society that's disinherited from its Christianity. Carol singers not singing Christian carol songs, Christmas trees having no representation of Christianity. Talk about co-opting someone else's imagery. Like taking Christ out of Christmas, replacing it with an X, taking Christ out of Christmas, calling it gift-giving season. What the fuck? Gift-giving, sorry for my language, but gift-giving season? What the hell?
It was necessary.
Yeah, or holiday trees.
Happy holidays. And
What? Holiday trees? Which religion is it that uses the tree? Christians. You know, Jews don't do it. Muslims don't do it. Buddhists don't do it. It's not a Diwali tree, you know. So it's why do we? So that's why it was important to have a public Christmas carol service that declared Christ as the centre.
Yeah, I totally agree. And before I ask you the final question, which will be a very serious question, but what is your favourite Christmas song outside of a carol? Feliz Navidad, Step Into Christmas?
Ring Out Solstice Bells. You know, the guy with the flute.
I knew it'd have to be some obscure one that you picked.
But I love it for the melody.
Well, I'm going to put it on Spotify
afterwards
as well. And you know, I'm a sucker for a Christmas song.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm probably on bottle 2 port now whilst watching this back.
If it's not that, the other one is I'm a sucker for Cliff Richard.
I love Cliff Richard.
So Cliff Richard, you know, and he sang a song called Saviour's Day.
Yeah, Saviour's Day is a beautiful song.
It really is.
I love Cliff Richard. I mean, from Devil Woman all the way to Saviour's Day, all the bits in between, wired for sound. But we could go off on a tangent now.
Yeah.
I know that by now I could quite possibly be drunk, and I think I'm going to go to Cliff Richard and I'm going to play your one as a mark of respect. But the final message to anyone out there that's suffering today on Christmas, they feel alone, they feel lost, they feel rejected, they feel like they've made mistakes, they're in a position where they don't want to be. What message of hope would you give them? Some people won't even have a Christmas tree up. I won't this year. I'll be sitting in my front room without a tree. This is not a feel sorry for Liam Tuff's day, by the way. I just want my audience to know that life isn't perfect all the time, and sometimes we all fall short of hitting our target and our goals of what we actually really want in life. But for me, I think things can get better if you apply yourself and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. So the Christmas tree, funnily, I am going to answer the question, I promise. The Christmas tree is a representation of Christ. It is the idea, it's meant to be a representation of the tree of life that is in the Genesis story, which is itself a representation of Christ, which is why Christians use Christmas trees. And remember earlier in our conversation, I said that, like, you know, if all that you have to offer Christ is your pain, then offer it to him, because he can use that. And I would say to people that, you know, are maybe mourning or lonely or sad this Christmas, is I would say, if you have the chance to go to church, go to church. Go to church, be around people, say hello to people, you know, don't be alone. Reach out to whom you can, if you can. But if you are stuck in sadness, like I'll use you as an example, if I may. But if you are struggling with something, right, then lay that at the feet of Jesus. Lay that at the feet of Jesus and offer it to him. And in that offering to him your pains, be completely honest. You know, if you're heartbroken, be heartbroken. If you're angry, be angry. If you're bitter, be bitter. And offer it to him honestly and say, you know, Lord, this is all that I've got to offer you. What do you want to do with it? And if you offer it to him in sincerity and let him take it, then there will be an opportunity for healing. And take time to focus your mind not on your pains, but on that scene 2,000 years ago, and use your imagination to sort of capture this. Imagine being there at that scene where Christ is born, and give yourself space emotionally to celebrate that fact. Because in that birth, there is hope. You know, you talked about this idea of starting again, and that the birth of Christ is the beginning of the reset, the great reset. You know, forget whatever Weth is up to.
The proper reset.
Yeah. And if you plug into that, it could be an opportunity for you to take your life in a new direction, or to draw a line between you and the past and take solace in that moment. And then if you can, you know, go out, get yourself to church, go and meet people, go and involve yourself, you know, send that text message to that friend, The vast majority of us have got someone we can reach out to.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're not feeling love this Christmas, at least send your love out there.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised what you get back.
Also, it feels nice sending love out. A bit like giving presents. I prefer giving than receiving. But I tell you what, whatever you do, if you're feeling sad, lost, and a little bit out of sorts, do not put on mud lonely this Christmas, because that will send you over the edge.
And I would also say, like, you know, it is about where we are in our own headspace. You know, it's where we are in our own headspace, and to some degree, we do have choices about that. And you can give yourself a rest by focusing on something else.
Cliff Richard.
Well, I would say don't focus on the fluff. Focus on the source of the joy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had difficult Christmases. You know, when my mum died. There's been tragedies in my life. Take a moment to remember the people that you've lost. Take a moment to remember all the times that they showed you love in your life, and just be grateful. Be grateful for those times that they've shown you love, that they gave you that moment of happiness, and offer that up to God as well. I did this meditation once, actually, you know, where I just remembered all the times that people had shown me love in my life. And I just spent a whole train journey just reflecting and remembering people's kindnesses and people's loving sacrifices. And by the end of the train journey, I came out really sort of filled up, spiritually fed.
Yeah, I'll get it.
You know, and I would say to you, like, and I say this to you, is, you know, I know you've had a painful separation, but look back over the course of that relationship, remember all those good times, and then thank God for them.
Cool, I don't know about that.
Well, I just offer it to you. And maybe in thanking God for those times, the good times, those times when you felt loved, those times when you felt valued, those times when you felt appreciated, that can then move you forward to a point where you could actually say a prayer to bless that person. You know, even though they're a source of pain, or forgive that person, even though they might have done you wrong. I
think forgiveness is key.
It really is.
I think let go of the resentment. If something's chewing you up, you've got to stop chewing. Yeah. Like, let it go.
Yeah. It sounds hippie-like, but your imagination is a vehicle by which you can change the way you think.
And on that note, I hope people have got some value and some strength. This wasn't meant to be a depressing podcast. It was more of a...
I enjoyed it.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's real. People have ups and downs and they have wobbles. There's light at the end of the tunnel. If you're one of them people suffering in silence or struggling, or you didn't get to see your kids this year, or you've split up with your family that you loved and you adored, and you're sitting there thinking, how can things improve? I mean, let's use D-Ream, for example. If you're my age, things can only get better, and they will as soon as you start taking one step in front of the other. And maybe you need to find something to believe in that's bigger than you. And Bob, I love you, brother.
It's been great. I love you too.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And I'll see you for our St. George's special.
Yes, St. George's special. Looking forward to it.
You'll love that. There's a thumbnail here somewhere. Give it a click, have a watch, and play Cliff Richard. Good health and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.